The Black Hat Men Part 1. The night in the hills. The first time Emily saw the lights, she thought they were a trick of her tired eyes. She was driving home from her sister's place, winding along the narrow road that cut through the hills. Midnight, no other cars, the hum of her old sedan filling the silence. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of pine and wet earth. It began with a glow, soft, bluish-white, rising over the ridge to her right. Not headlights. Not a plane. It shimmered, pulsing faintly, as if breathing. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Keep driving," she told herself. But the glow swelled until it spilled across the tree line. Then it moved, not like anything mechanical, but smooth, gliding, as if the air itself was pushing it. It cut in front of her car without a sound. Emily's foot hit the brake. The tires squealed, the car shuddered to a stop. And then she saw it. A disc, perhaps 30 feet across, metallic but not reflecting the moonlight. It made its own light, casting shadows in impossible directions. It hovered silently, maybe 30 feet above the road. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She fumbled for her phone, but before she could raise it, the air shifted, like a static charge building around her. Her hair stood on end. The disc tilted slightly, and something small, a glinting object, drifted down from its underside. It wasn't thrown or dropped. It floated. It landed in the middle of the road with a soft metallic click. Emily's instinct screamed leave it, but her curiosity was louder. She stepped out, the cold air biting her skin. The object was small, no bigger than a coin, dark but patterned with tiny grooves that caught the glow of the craft above. When she reached for it, the object was warm. The instant her fingers closed around it, the disc shot straight upward, no acceleration, just instant velocity, and vanished into the night sky. The silence afterward was almost painful. Emily stood in the middle of the road, her breath visible in the cold. She pocketed the object, climbed back into her car, and drove home in a daze. She didn't know that something had already started following her. Part 2. The Men by the Fence. The next morning, Emily tried to convince herself it was just a weird dream. But the object in her jacket pocket said otherwise. She placed it on her kitchen table, turning it over in the light. The grooves weren't random, they formed tiny, repeating shapes that almost looked like letters. But not from any alphabet she knew. Every time she stared too long, she got a headache. By noon, she decided she'd keep it hidden. If she didn't talk about it, maybe the whole thing would fade from her life. It didn't. 2 days later, she spotted them. She was backing out of her driveway when she noticed a black sedan parked at the far end of her street. Inside, 2 men in black suits and wide-brimmed black hats sat perfectly still. Not talking. Not even looking at each other. Just facing forward. Something about them made her stomach twist. They looked wrong. Not in their clothes, those were sharp and clean. But in the way they held themselves. Too straight. Too still. That night, she saw them again. This time, the sedan was gone. But both men were standing by the fence at the edge of her yard, their silhouettes visible under the streetlight. She froze by her living room window. One of them slowly turned his head toward her. Even at that distance, she could tell something about his face wasn't right, the skin too pale, the eyes too dark. Without thinking, she yanked the curtains shut and locked every door. At 3 a.m., a sound woke her, the faint click of her back gate opening. She lay in bed, heart pounding, listening to slow, deliberate footsteps on the gravel path outside her bedroom wall. Then silence. When she finally worked up the courage to peek outside, there was no one there. But in the dirt by the gate, she saw 2 sets of footprints. Perfectly identical. And one more thing, the strange object she had left in her kitchen? It was now sitting on her bedroom nightstand. Part 3. Voices like static. Emily didn't remember bringing the object upstairs. She didn't remember touching it at all. But there it was, a dull gleam in the moonlight, as if it had been waiting for her. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. By sunrise, she'd made up her mind, she was going to get rid of it. No matter what it was, no matter what it meant. She grabbed it, shoved it in a shoebox, and drove 20 miles out to an old hiking trail where she used to go as a teenager. She buried it deep under a pile of rocks, her hands shaking. On the drive back, she felt lighter. Safer. That feeling lasted exactly 2 hours. She was pouring herself coffee when the front doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Through the frosted glass, she saw them, the 2 men in black, standing side by side. Neither smiled. Neither blinked. Emily's first instinct was to stay quiet, Pretend she wasn't home. But then, a faint buzzing sound filled the air, not from the doorbell, but from inside her head. Like radio static tuned to a station that didn't quite exist. And then she heard it. A voice. No, two voices. Perfectly synchronized. "You have something of ours." Emily's breath caught. "No, she stammered, but her lips weren't moving. She wasn't speaking. The words she heard weren't reaching her ears at all. They were inside. The static grew louder. "We will take it back." Without thinking, Emily slammed the deadbolt and stumbled back. She grabbed her phone to call someone, anyone, but the screen stayed black, even when she held the power button. When she looked up, the men were no longer at her door. They were inside her living room. Neither had moved in a normal way, one moment outside, the next standing on her rug, as though the space between them had never existed. Emily backed into the kitchen, her eyes darting for something, anything, she could use to defend herself. That's when she saw it. The object. Back on her table, as if it had never left. Part 4, the object. Emily's mouth went dry. It was impossible, she had buried the thing miles away. She could still feel the dirt under her fingernails from covering it. Yet here it sat, humming faintly, as though the air around it bent in subtle ripples. The two men in black didn't move toward it. They just looked at her. Their faces were wrong, too symmetrical, too smooth. Their skin had the texture of wax left in the sun. One blinked, but the motion was jerky, like a glitch in a video. Emily's voice cracked. "What is it?" Both spoke at once, but not aloud, inside her head again, weaving over each other like two identical recordings slightly out of sync. "A beacon." She shook her head. "Beacon for what?" "Home." Her stomach dropped. "Yours?" "Not ours." The room seemed colder now. She stepped back, bumping into the counter. "Then who?" The taller man's head tilted, unnaturally slow. "It has already called them." The hum of the object deepened, resonating in her chest. Images flashed behind her eyes, sky boiling black, towering silhouettes moving through fire, shapes that weren't made to be seen by human eyes. She stumbled, clutching her head. When her vision cleared, the men were closer. Too close. Emily's instinct screamed at her to run, but her body wouldn't respond. It was as if invisible threads had wrapped around her muscles, holding her in place. "You should not have taken it," they said in unison. Her breath came fast. "I didn't take it. I don't even know what it." The shorter man stepped forward, and for the first time, she saw his hands. Long, bone-thin fingers that seemed to bend in more joints than they should have. He reached toward the object, but stopped, hovering inches above it. "Too late," the voices said. "It is awake." The hum became a pulse. The lights in the kitchen flickered, and in the reflection of the microwave door, Emily saw something else. Something standing behind her. Part 5, the arrival. Emily spun around, heart hammering against her ribs. There was nothing there. At least, not in the way her mind expected something to be. The air rippled, like heat haze, but the distortion had weight. It bent the light wrong, swallowing colors into a gray that seemed deeper than shadow. Her breath misted, though the room wasn't cold. The men in black didn't look at her anymore, their heads turned toward the distortion with an almost reverent stillness. "It has found you," they whispered. The pulse from the object grew sharper, each throb making her teeth ache. Shapes began to coalesce in the distortion. Tall. Limbs too long. Fingers that curled slowly, tasting the air. There was no face, not really, but a vague suggestion of eyes, dark and wet, watching her with terrible patience. Emily stumbled back, nearly tripping over a chair. "What is that?" The men answered without looking at her. "A claimant." Her skin prickled. "For me? For what you carry?" She glanced at the object on the table. It seemed brighter now, drawing the thing closer like a magnet. The distortion moved, not walking, but folding space around itself, each shift bringing it nearer. The kitchen walls stretched and warped in its wake, cupboards twisting like reflections in a warped mirror. Emily's every instinct screamed run, but the front door was on the other side of it. She bolted for the hallway. A sound followed her, not footsteps, but something like wet fabric dragging across stone. She didn't dare look back. She hit the stairs, taking them two at a time, but halfway up, the hum from the object suddenly stopped. The silence was worse. From below, the men in black spoke in perfect unison, their voices flat and final. "You cannot outrun the signal." And from behind her, Far too close, something whispered in a voice that was almost hers, but not. Emily. Part 6. The signal inside Emily froze halfway up the stairs. Her name. It hadn't just been spoken to her. She'd felt it. Inside her head. She spun, expecting the distortion to be right there, but the stairwell was empty. The men in black were gone. The thing was gone. For a moment, it was almost worse than if they'd been there. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. The screen was on, but not with any app she recognized, just a pale gray background and a single pulsing dot in the center. The dot throbbed in perfect sync with her heartbeat. Emily's throat tightened. She didn't remember opening anything. She didn't even remember unlocking her phone. She tried to turn it off. The screen stayed lit. "You have it now." The words appeared under the dot. No notification, no message tone, they just faded into existence, one letter at a time. Her stomach flipped. "Who is this?" "You know." A chill swept through her. She didn't want to admit it, but she did know. Whatever she'd picked up in that field the night she saw the UFO, it wasn't just the object. It was this signal. And now, it was inside her. Suddenly, every sound in the house went dead, the fridge, the hum of the street outside, even the faint ticking of the hallway clock. Then, a tap. From the bathroom mirror upstairs. 1, 2, 3 slow knocks from the other side of the glass. Her phone screen flashed again. "Let it in." Emily backed away from the stairs, but her feet felt heavy, like something else was deciding for her. Her pulse was in her ears now, in her fingertips, in the floorboards. The knock came again. This time, the mirror answered. A faint, blurred handprint pressed against the other side of the glass, and slid down, leaving a smear of darkness. Part 7. The mirror guessed. Emily's breath fogged in the air, though the room wasn't cold. The handprint on the mirror deepened, fingers stretching unnaturally long, nails dragging against the glass with a sound like a knife over porcelain. She wanted to run. Every cell in her body screamed at her to run. But her legs moved forward instead, slow and mechanical, like she was sleepwalking. Her reflection wasn't matching her anymore. She blinked, and the woman in the mirror didn't. The mirrored Emily tilted her head in a way that would have broken her neck, the movement too sharp, too precise. Then, a smile. Not hers. Her phone buzzed again in her palm, though she didn't remember still holding it. The dot pulsed harder now, like it was excited. "It will come through if you stay still." Her mirrored self raised a hand, palm against the glass. Emily's own hand rose to meet it without her permission. The touch was wrong, not cold, not warm, just wet. The mirror rippled, like the surface of a lake disturbed by a stone. Her other self leaned closer until their foreheads almost touched through the shifting glass. "You brought it back," the reflection whispered. Except the lips in the mirror didn't move, the voice was in Emily's skull, vibrating behind her eyes. And then the reflected Emily's eyes changed. Not human anymore. Solid black, glossy and deep, swallowing the light around them. Something pushed from behind her reflection, a shape, a shadow, long arms curling forward. The mirrored Emily stepped aside, smiling wider now, inviting it forward. The knocking started again, not from the mirror this time, but from inside her head. Part 8. Crossing. The surface of the mirror bulged outward like someone pressing their face against thin ice. The glass groaned, spiderweb cracks forming around the point where the pressure was strongest. Emily tried to pull away, but her hand wouldn't come off the mirror. It was as if her skin had fused to it. Her reflection grinned wider, teeth far too many, stretching from cheek to cheek. The shadow behind it pressed forward again. This time, something slipped through, long, wet fingers tipped with nails that tapered into needles. They probed the air like an insect's antennae before curling around Emily's wrist. Her phone vibrated violently, slipping from her other hand and clattering to the floor. The screen lit up with a new message. "Don't let it pull you in." But it wasn't pulling her in. It was pulling itself out. The glass bent outward, stretching like a sheet of liquid. A head emerged, not shaped right for anything human, too narrow at the jaw, too wide at the temples. Its skin looked like paper soaked in ink, dripping into the carpet. Emily's knees buckled. A voice, not hers, not anyone's she'd ever known, slid into her mind like oil. "You've been watching me for so long, Emily. Now I get to watch you." She realized the reflection had been wrong all along, not because it copied her imperfectly, but because it was never a reflection at all. The thing stepped fully out. The air changed instantly, heavy and stale, and every shadow in the room stretched toward it like they were bowing. From the hallway came a sharp gasp. Emily whipped her head around. It was Sophie, wide-eyed, clutching the doorway. The creature's head turned toward the child, and Emily felt something inside her snap. Part 9, The Chase. Emily lunged between Sophie and the thing, shoving her daughter back into the hallway. "Run!" she screamed, her voice raw. The creature tilted its head, studying her like a cat watching a mouse decide whether to dart left or right. Then it moved, not walking, not crawling, but unfolding toward her in jerks, like someone cutting frames out of a film reel. Emily grabbed the bedroom door and slammed it shut just as a sharp crack split the air. The wood warped inward, as though something on the other side was pushing reality itself through it. Sophie's tiny hand gripped Emily's. "Mom. It's him." Emily didn't have time to think about the implications. She dragged Sophie toward the stairs, but the light bulbs overhead began to hum and flicker. Shadows ran up the walls in the wrong direction, toward them instead of away from the light. A deep, wet knock echoed from below, not the front door. The sound came from inside the walls. They stumbled down the steps. The kitchen window was dark, the outside street lights dead. Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. She fumbled it out. "You can't outrun it. Break the mirror." But the mirror wasn't upstairs anymore. She could feel it, the same suffocating cold was creeping through the entire house. From the living room, the mirror's surface rippled into view on the wall where no mirror had ever hung before. The creature was stepping through again, like reality was offering it shortcuts. Sophie whimpered, "He says he wants to take me home." Emily's pulse roared in her ears. "This is your home," she shouted, but the words felt useless. The thing's gaze was fixed entirely on Sophie now, and Emily knew, if it reached her, there'd be no getting her back. Do you want me to push forward into Part 10, the confrontation scene where Emily finally tries to destroy the connection? Part 10, Breaking the Reflection. Emily yanked Sophie behind her and snatched the heavy cast-iron fireplace poker. The mirror's surface shivered, the creature halfway through, its shadow stretching unnaturally across the carpet. "Stay behind me," she hissed, though her hands were trembling. The thing's voice scraped inside her skull without moving its mouth. "She doesn't belong here." Emily's grip tightened on the poker. "She belongs with me." The glass wavered. Sophie's reflection wasn't matching her movements anymore. It tilted its head like the creature, eyes black and depthless. Emily's gut clenched. If she hesitated, Sophie would be gone. The thing stepped fully into the room. Its face flickered, sometimes human, sometimes the warped grin from Sophie's drawings. The air grew dense, pressing into Emily's chest. "Give her," the voice pulsed, louder now, "and you live." Emily's body screamed at her to run, but instead she swung. The poker smashed into the mirror. The sound wasn't a shatter, it was a scream, long and metallic, vibrating through the floor. The glass didn't break. It bled, a black liquid dripping down the frame, pooling and smoking where it touched the carpet. The creature recoiled as if struck, its form glitching, limbs twitching out of sync. Emily roared and hit it again. The mirror buckled inward like water under a storm. The room shook. Light burst from the cracks, spider webbing across the surface, cold light, the kind that felt like frost on the bone. Sophie cried out and clutched Emily's leg. With one final swing, Emily drove the poker through the center. The mirror imploded, pulling air, sound, and the creature into itself in a violent rush. The pressure yanked at Emily's hair, her clothes, her very breath, but she held on to Sophie. Both of them braced against the floor until the sucking wind stopped. Silence. The mirror was gone. Only the scorch mark outline of its frame remained on the wall. Part 11, The quiet that follows. For a long time, neither of them moved. Emily's ears rang from the sudden silence, her chest heaving like she'd run miles. Sophie was the first to speak, her voice small. "Are they gone?" Emily swallowed, forcing her voice steady. Yes, baby. They're gone." She wasn't sure she believed it. The room smelled faintly of burned dust. Where the mirror had been, the wall was smooth, no hooks, no nails, not even a trace of paint disturbance, as though it had never been there at all. Emily pulled Sophie into her arms. Her daughter's heartbeat thudded against her ribs, fast and fragile. They slept in the same bed that night, the poker resting against the nightstand. Emily didn't close her eyes until dawn's light crept in. In the days that followed, Sophie went back to playing, laughing, and drawing. But Emily noticed she never once went near the empty space where the mirror had hung. One afternoon, Emily found a fresh sheet of paper on the kitchen table. Sophie's crayon work again. A sunny house, stick figures holding hands. But in the far corner, behind the smiling figures, there was a faint gray outline. A tall figure. A wide smile. Emily's blood ran cold. "Sophie," she said carefully, "who's that?" Her daughter looked up from her juice box, as if the answer was obvious. "That's my new friend. He says the mirror was just one door." Outside, the reflection in the window lingered a heartbeat too long after they moved.